Smoke filled the corridor before I even understood what had happened. The floor shook under my feet, and the lights above me flickered once, twice, then turned red. I grabbed the wall to stay standing. Somewhere behind me, a door hissed shut on its own, sealing off a section that was already lost. My name is Vess. I was the third navigator on the mining ship Hollow Tide, and in the space of 11 minutes, I watched my whole world fall apart. We had been cutting into a rock field on the edge of a quiet system, nothing unusual, nothing we hadn't done 100 times before. Then one of the drills hit a pocket of unstable gas, and the shockwave cracked our reactor housing. I remember the sound most of all, a deep groan, like the ship itself was in pain, followed by silence, and then screaming. I ran toward the bridge, but the corridor ahead of me was already filling with smoke. A voice on the intercom, calm at first, then not calm at all, told everyone to move to the escape pods. I never made it that far. A support beam came down between me and the exit, and by the time I found another path, the escape pods were gone. All of them. I was alone. I remember passing the small kitchen area where our cook, an older man named Oren, used to make tea for anyone who could not sleep during the long shifts. The kettle was still sitting on its stand, tipped over, water pooling on the floor, and steaming faintly in the cold air. I did not stop. I could not let myself stop, not even for a second, because I knew if I did, I would not start moving again. I checked every channel I could reach. No answer from the bridge. No answer from engineering. No answer from anyone. The ship's system told me, in its flat mechanical voice, that 40 other crew members were no longer showing life signs. I sat down on the cold floor and stared at that number for a long time before I could make myself move again. That should have been the worst part of my day. It was not. 2 hours later, my sensors picked up 3 ships closing in on our position. Not rescue ships, raiders, the kind that hunt broken vessels the way scavenger birds circle something dying. They had seen our distress beacon, and they were not coming to help. I sealed myself inside a small maintenance closet near the old communications hub, the only room on that section of the ship with power left. I had a working transmitter, a hand weapon I barely knew how to use, and maybe 6 hours of air. I did the math in my head, and none of it looked good. Rescue from my own people, if anyone even heard my call, was days away. The raiders were less than an hour out. I thought about every story I had ever heard about that hour, about what happens to people found alive on a ship like this, when raiders get there first. I did not want to think about it, but my mind would not let it go. So I made a choice that felt reckless even as I made it. I opened every channel my transmitter had, not just the ones meant for my own kind, and I sent my call as wide as it would go. I aimed part of it at a system most pilots warned you to avoid, a system full of storms and fast ships and short tempers. The system everyone in this part of space called the Deathworld, not because I believed the stories about the people there, because I had nothing left to lose by trying. I gave my name, my ship, my situation, and I gave it fast, because I did not know how much time the transmitter had left either. Then I waited. 6 minutes felt like 6 years. I kept my eyes on the small display in front of me, watching the 3 raider ships grow closer on the scanner, waiting for a reply that I told myself would probably never come. My hands were shaking. I remember pressing them flat against my knees just to make them stop. To keep myself from falling apart completely, I made a list in my head of everyone I knew who might still be alive somewhere on the ship, though I already suspected the answer was no one. I thought of my bunkmate, a quiet young woman who collected small stones from every rock field we mined, keeping them in a jar under her bed. I thought of the 2 engineers who always argued about the best route through the asteroid belt, loudly and happily, every single shift. Thinking of them hurt, but it also kept my mind from drifting toward the sound of my own heartbeat, which had grown so loud I could hear it over everything else. At minute 9, the display lit up with an incoming signal. My chest went tight. I almost did not answer it, afraid it would be nothing, afraid it would be worse than nothing. Then a voice came through, steady and clear, speaking my language with an accent I had never heard before. "This is Captain Ellis of the Widow's Reach. We have your signal, Hollow Tide. Say your status." I told him everything. The breach, the deaths, the raiders closing in, my location, My air supply. My voice cracked more than once. He did not interrupt me. He let me finish. And then there was a short pause before he spoke again, and something in his tone had changed. It was quieter, but harder, like a door closing somewhere behind his words. Copy that. Hold your position and stay quiet. We are already moving toward you. I asked him how that was possible. My call had only just reached him. No ship should have been close enough to respond that fast. His answer surprised me. We keep patrol ships near these lanes, off the record, because too many small crews have been lost out here before anyone official could reach them. You are not the first Mayday we have caught early. I do not intend for you to be the last. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing at all. I just held on to the sound of his voice like it was something solid I could grab in the dark. The raiders reached me before the Widow's Reach did. I heard the clank of something attaching to the hull 2 decks above me, followed by the slow grinding sound of metal being cut. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I turned off every light in the small room and pressed myself into the corner behind an old storage crate, weapon held in both hands, though I doubted I could hit anything with it even if I tried. Footsteps echoed through the corridor outside. 2 sets, maybe 3. A voice called out something in a language I did not understand, sharp and impatient, clearly searching for something worth taking. I held my breath and did not move. A second voice answered the first, closer this time, close enough that I could hear the scrape of boots stopping just outside the closet door. I stared at the thin gap under the door, watching a shadow pass in front of it, waiting for the handle to turn. It did not. Whoever it was moved on after a moment, following the sound of something else further down the corridor, and I let the breath out of my lungs so slowly it made my chest ache. Then, through the static on my transmitter, Captain Ellis spoke again, low and even. We are 30 seconds out. Stay down. Whatever you hear next, stay down and do not come out until I tell you to. I did not have time to ask what he meant. The whole ship shuddered, not from another breach, but from the outside, from something slamming against the hull with enough force that dust fell from the ceiling around me. The footsteps in the corridor stopped. Someone shouted, and this time, the voice was not impatient. It was afraid. I do not know exactly what happened outside the hull in the next 4 minutes, because I stayed exactly where Captain Ellis told me to stay, but I could feel it. The ship rocked twice more, sharp and sudden, and each time I heard shouting grow further away instead of closer, like the raiders were being pulled back from me instead of pushed toward me. Then, just as suddenly, everything went still. Not the eerie stillness of a dead ship, but a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes after something dangerous has decided to leave. My transmitter crackled again. This is Ellis. The raiders are breaking off. We are sending a team to your location now. Say something so I know you are still with us. I am still here, I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin and shaking with something that was not quite fear anymore. Good, he said. Hang on a little longer. It took them 19 more minutes to cut through to where I was hiding, though it felt much longer than that sitting alone in the dark. When the door finally opened, the light from outside nearly blinded me. A woman stepped through first, younger than I expected, wearing a suit marked with a small patch I did not recognize. She knelt down in front of me right away, checking my face, my hands, the way I was breathing, before she said a single word about anything else. Her name was Grace, and she was the ship's medic. She spoke gently, the way you would speak to someone who had just woken from a bad dream and was not yet sure it was over. She asked if I was hurt anywhere. She asked if I could walk. She did not ask what I was worth, or what my company could pay for the rescue, or anything at all about business. She just asked if I was all right, like that was the only question that mattered in that moment. I told her I could walk. My legs did not fully agree, but I managed anyway, with her hand steady on my arm the whole way. They led me through my own ship, past sections I had known for years, and would now never see the same way again, until we reached the hole they had cut into the outer hull. Beyond it, connected by a temporary tunnel, sat the Widow's Reach, lit from the inside with warm yellow light that felt like the first honest comfort I had experienced in hours. Once aboard, they brought me to a small room with soft chairs and a blanket that smelled faintly of something floral, and a man named Daniel, who ran their communications station, brought me a warm drink in a metal cup. He told me it was called cocoa, and that I should drink it slowly. I did not understand why a warm drink mattered so much in that moment, but somehow it did. My hands finally stopped shaking around the cup. Captain Ellis came to see me not long after. He was tall, with tired eyes and a calm way of speaking that made the whole room feel less dangerous just by being in it. He sat down across from me and asked how I was feeling, and only after I answered did he begin to explain what had happened outside while I was hiding. The raiders had not expected serious resistance. Most crews out here traveled alone or in pairs, easy targets for anyone willing to take the risk. They had not planned for a ship like the Widow's Reach to arrive so quickly, or to fight the way it did. Ellis did not go into detail about the fight itself, and I did not ask him to. I only wanted to know that it was over, and he assured me that it was. The raiders had broken off and fled once they realized what they were dealing with, and his crew had let them go rather than chase them further into open space. I asked him why. Why his people had come so fast, why they had risked their own ship and their own lives for someone they had never met, from a species they had no formal agreement with. I expected some kind of complicated answer, something about trade routes or treaties or hidden reasons that made more sense than simple kindness. He looked at me for a moment before he answered, like the question itself did not quite make sense to him. "You called for help," he said. "We heard you. That is really all there is to it." I waited for him to say more, certain there had to be some other reason underneath that one. There was not. That was the whole of it, as plain and simple as he made it sound. Over the next 2 days, while the Widow's Reach carried me toward the nearest station that could help me contact my company, I got to know the crew a little. There was Noah, the pilot, who moved through the ship with an easy confidence that made even sharp turns through debris fields feel almost gentle. There was Lily, the engineer, who spent an hour showing me how their small repair drones worked, mostly because she seemed to enjoy explaining things as much as I enjoyed listening. There was Grace, who checked on me twice a day without ever making it feel like an inconvenience, and Daniel, who kept bringing me more of that warm drink he called cocoa, insisting I try it with different amounts of something sweet mixed in, until I finally admitted I liked it best plain. None of them treated me like cargo, or like a stranger to be tolerated until the job was finished. They treated me like someone who mattered, simply because I was there, and because I had needed help, and because they were the ones who happened to answer. One evening, a younger crew member named Oliver sat with me while I ate, and told me, almost shyly, that he understood a little of what I had gone through. Years earlier, before he joined the Widow's Reach, his own transport had lost power, drifting near a cold moon, with no station nearby. He had waited 3 days before anyone found him, and he said the worst part was not the cold or the hunger, but the silence, the not knowing if anyone out there had even heard his call. He said that was part of why he chose this crew once he was older, so that no one else would have to sit through that same silence, if his ship could help it. I did not know what to say, so I simply thanked him for telling me, and he smiled, like that was answer enough. On the last night before we reached the station, I sat with Ellis near a window that looked out over open space, more stars than I had ever taken the time to notice before that moment. I asked him something I had been turning over in my mind since the rescue. I asked if his people always answered calls like mine, calls from strangers, from species with no real connection to his own. He thought about it for a while before answering, the way people do when they want to give you something true instead of something easy. "We used to be very alone," he said. "For a long time, it was just us, out here, figuring things out on our own, with no one to call if something went wrong. I think that changes how you look at everyone else's calls for help. When you know what it feels like to have no one answer, you tend to answer, if you can." He told me that early in his career, before he became a captain, he had served on a smaller ship that once sent out a call very much like mine, into a storm, without much hope of anyone hearing it. No one came for almost 2 full days. They survived, barely, and he said he never forgot what those 2 days felt like, sitting with a dying engine and a slowly shrinking supply of air, wondering if the universe had simply decided not to answer. He said that memory sat with him on every patrol since, quiet but always present, and it was part of why the Widow's Reach kept its watch so close along these lanes. I did not have a response to that. I only nodded, and we sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars slide past the window. We reached the station 2 days later. My company had already been informed, and a small transport was waiting to take me the rest of the way home, back to people who would ask about insurance and cargo losses, and reports that needed filing. Before I left the widow's reach, each member of the crew came to say goodbye in their own way. Grace gave me a small kit of medical supplies, just in case. Daniel gave me a folded paper with instructions on how to make cocoa properly, in case I ever wanted it again. Noah shook my hand and told me to fly safer next time, with a small smile that took any sting out of the words. Lily promised that if my next ship ever broke down anywhere near their patrol route, she would personally come fix it herself. Ellis walked me to the airlock last. He did not say anything grand or important. He simply told me to take care of myself, and that if I ever needed help again, all I had to do was call. Any frequency, any distance, someone would be listening. Oliver was there too, standing a little behind the others, and he gave me a small stone he said he had picked up on that cold moon years ago, the one he had waited on for 3 days. He told me it had reminded him, every time he looked at it, that waiting does not always end badly, and he thought maybe I could use a reminder like that more than he still needed one. I kept it in my palm the whole walk back to the transport, turning it over with my fingers, and I have kept it close to me ever since. I have told this story many times since that day, to my company, to other pilots, to anyone who asks why I no longer avoid that system full of storms and fast ships and short tempers. I tell them about the smoke, and the fear, and the sound of raiders cutting through metal above my head. I tell them about the voice that answered when I expected silence, and the ship that arrived faster than anyone said was possible. Some of the pilots I tell this to still shake their heads and say I was simply fortunate, that most calls sent into that system never get answered at all, let alone in 9 minutes. Maybe they are right. I have thought about that too, more than once, turning it over the same way I turn over the small stone Oliver gave me. But I have also noticed that every pilot who tells me I was fortunate has never actually sent a call in that direction themselves. I have, and I would do it again without hesitation, because I know now what waits on the other end for those who try. But the part I remember most clearly, the part that stays with me every time I close my eyes, is the moment Grace knelt down in front of me, in that small dark room, and asked if I was all right before she asked anything else at all. I called into the dark that day, expecting nothing, aimed at a world everyone told me to fear. Something answered anyway, someone came. Sometimes, on quiet nights during long shifts, I still find myself walking past the communication station just to check that it is working properly, even when I know it is. Old habits from that day have never fully left me, and I do not mind that they have not. They remind me that a single call, sent with no real hope attached to it, once changed the entire direction of my life. I do not think I will ever stop being grateful that it was them,